Hello everyone. Today I'm going to show you how I made this collage painting out of some alcohol ink backgrounds that I wasn't too happy with to use them as art on their own. So I made the alcohol ink backgrounds just intuitively, and then I saw this flower pot coming out of it. So I used my iPad Pro in a program called Procreate, and that's where I designed the initial shapes that I wanted to cut out. So luckily in Procreate you can, it records everything you do and you can export a video. So I exported this video so you could see my process of designing what I wanted my flower pot to look like. So the very last step, as you can see right about here, I take 4 elements and I put them on different layers so that I can export them as seen right here. This is one layer, this top piece to cut out. So I'm going to, here you can see the 4 layers that I did because I eventually printed them out on my printer, as you can see here, on different pieces of paper, because each sheet on its own is going to be cut out of an alcohol ink background. So that one is going to be, that top part is going to be cut in one, and the pot is going to be in another, and this greenery here is going to be cut out of another alcohol ink background, and this main sort of lotus flower is going to be cut out of another alcohol ink background. So here we are at my scan and cut 2. And I'm scanning in. Oh, first we have to take a cute puppy break because Sherlock was on his back showing what was under his kilt to you there. So I had to get a little shot in of that. Sherlock. So I'm putting it in my scan and cut here. And the pot is first. And it's going to be cut out of its own layer. And so I'm just showing what to do on my scan and cut here, but if you have one, then you'll know how to do that. But I saved it into my machine's memory as well. So here are my alcoholic backgrounds, the different ones, and I chose this maroony black and gold one for the pot. So here it is cutting out of my Scan and Cut 2 machine, and you can see it cut the pot perfectly out of that. I just love this machine so much. I just can't get enough of cutting things out of it. So here's the second layer, as you can see. This is like, to me, it's the greenery. So I chose this green and gold and a bit of blue background for it. So I cut it all out of this one layer. And eventually I'll show you how I kept all these pieces together. I just put washi tape over them at this point in strips and took them off the sheet to keep their places. Here I've saved this layer into the machine. I've saved each layer actually into the machine to cut it out again. And I was just positioning that lotus flower in the spot that I wanted it, in the perfect spot, so I could see exactly what colors would cut out. And you can see I'm cutting it out of the pink and blue portions there. So we're on to the next one. I'm cutting this sort of hanging bud branch thing that I drew out, and I decided to cut it out, use the negative space out of the green again and not waste any, and so that the painting would have a continuity to it, I just decided to cut it out of the green as well, and it happened to fit in that perfectly around the other greenery that I cut out, so that was quite lucky. So here it is cut out, and I'm just bringing it over to my layout here on my dollar store wood canvas, which fits. I actually designed it to fit onto this, so that's why it fits perfectly. But you see the washi tape there? That's what I did to keep the pieces in place like that. I just put strips over and took them off so that it would be easy for me to place it later. Okay, now we're on to, you see me randomly doing another abstract background here, but I was trying to decide what kind of background I wanted it to look like on the wood, and I've never prepared anything on wood before. So see how I made this grayish, bluish background, and I'm checking the maroon and black pot against it, and I just don't like the way it looks. So that's why I did this background like as a test to see if I wanted the background for this to be on white, black, or a mottled kind of abstract gray. And I don't like the abstract, it's too busy. So I decided to do it on either white or black. So here I'm going into preparing the wood for the collage, which I've never done this before. So first, I'm putting on a golden product called GAC 100, and that's to stop crazing in paintings. But it's like a good sort of sealer for the wood background before I put on the gesso. So you'll see in one of my previous videos, I just hauled some wood canvases from the dollar store. This was $4, so I was so happy to get this, so I had to use it. So I designed this flower pot to fit perfectly on it, and I'm using the GAC 100, and I'm mixing it with water just right on the canvas here, and I'm also doing the sides. Okay, so here I have my clear gesso. I was trying to decide here between, do I use white or do I use clear, but I kind of liked the thought of seeing the background of the wood show through. So, you know, at this point, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm like, okay, I've never done this before. I mixed some clear gesso with, as you saw there, a Daniel Smith rose color. And what I was seeing in my mind was a sort of translucent see-through ceiling of this wood that you could see the wood through it. I think you can understand what I'm saying there. But I had no idea whether it would look good or whatever. I just knew that I didn't want any texture on the background because it would conflict with the texture in the alcohol ink positive pieces. So I'm just mixing the clear gesso right on the canvas there with the pink, and putting a little bit of water on with it. But this is basically a sealing measure to seal in the wood anyway. I knew that I could paint over it or keep glazing on colors or whatever I wanted to do if it didn't look good. Okay, so here I had another bright idea. This just came to me because it was sitting on my table. I'm using this Tim Holtz Distress Stain in, I think it's called Vintage Photo, but it's like I'm using that on my baptismal document. I used it to tea dye stain my background. So I just love that. I love brown and pink together, so I thought, this will be kind of transparent too because it's a stain and it's on wood and I've already sealed it here. So what would happen if I, you know, gave it kind of like a tea-dyed stain look? And so the gesso is mostly dry. It's not actually fully dry. So what's interesting is it pulls up kind of a little bit of the gesso and mixes it with it. It's a very interesting effect. I've never mixed all these things together, and this is a total experiment, but I end up loving it. The other thing about Tim Holtz stains and distress is that, as you can see it there, see the texture coming through? as I scrape up the gesso, as it's not really fully dried, see it's kind of coming up in like a, you can see it sort of coming up and it's giving it like a streaky look. And I'm loving that because it's emphasizing the wood grain. So here I'm just taking off with a paper towel or whatever, just dabbing it off because I'm trying to create a little bit of a vignette effect with it darker around the edges. And then, as anyone who crafts with distress stains knows, when you tap on water like that, it comes off when you dab it off. So it's giving it a real distressed look, as you can see there, and I'm loving it. So here I'm just trying to go a little bit lighter. I wanted it was a little too busy for me. I went a little crazy on the distressing look, and I knew I wanted it needed to be a bit plain to show off the alcohol ink textures. So I'm just taking a little bit of white ink to try to emphasize, you know, bring down the texture in the middle, if you will, and I'm leaving the outside still darker as a vignette. But I'm just playing around here, just making it, keep playing with it until I'm happy with the result, and the result is awesome. I love it. After I held the pot against that grayish, really busy background, I knew that to me it was either going to have to be pure white or pure black or a pure color. And here I was going for just a plain sort of stained wood look. That's why I'm toning it down like this, but I think it still really worked. Okay, so after I was checking out my elements on the background, I figured, okay, I didn't want my pot just floating in the air, and I wanted it to be sitting on a table. So I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to make another alcohol ink background in brown, and I got that, as you can see in my new haul, I got that new brown alcohol ink. And it just happens to be, I thought it was going to be a nice cool brown like a Van Dyke, but it's not. It's like this warm orangey brown, which I don't really gravitate to. However, when I put it down with some darker colors, I figured it looks like a mahogany dark table, so I was quite happy with that. Here I'm pouring on some more of that distress stain to cool it down, and I'm putting some black in there. But the distress stain mixed with the alcohol ink is very interesting. It acts very strange. So I'm putting that down, and it sort of globs up, which is fine because I want darker bits, and see how it gives it a texture and it kind of floats on it. So it ends up giving a nice dark look. So my vision for this background for the table, I knew I was going to cut it into pieces. I just didn't know how, but I was thinking I was going to cut it into strips. So I was just trying to get this background darker because the alcohol ink is so luminous. I wanted the table to be a base for the piece too. So a lot of that distress stain really helped putting that in to make it darker. And then finally I remembered I had the black alcohol ink, and that really darkened it up nicely, and it really gave it some really nice texture. So here I come in with the black, and I figured, okay, I wonder if I can make this look sort of like wood, like a table, or like a mahogany type wood table. and I ended up just putting a lot of black in here, and then taking my I think it's by Tim Holtz, a Ranger tool where you put a little bit of foam or felt on the end, and so I just sprayed it there with alcohol, and then there's the tool there, that square tool, and I have a little bit of felt on it, and then I just smeared it sideways so that it looks like you know, wood grain kind of thing. And I didn't know if this would work or not, but it ended up looking really nice, and then tapping it to get those really nice circles on there. So this is a really good way to make like a wood looking texture. Use the Havana Brown by Pinata, by the alcohol inks, and then a black, and streak the black on there, and then use a tapping tool like this with some felt to and put the black on there and tap it around, and it will give you those mottled dark edges, and then the Havana Brown will like show luminous through the back. Okay, so here I had the idea, instead of just putting this plain background down, because it actually, the paper isn't wide enough, like it's, I guess, 11 inches, because it's 8.5, 11 Yupo paper, or photo paper, sorry, it's the back of a photo paper, and so it's not big enough to fit on that wood canvas. So I thought, okay, well, I'll cut it into strips and I'll stagger them, because that will fit with the collage look anyway, even though it's a bit quirky, and it's you know what I'm saying, I can leave the edges kind of thing. So another look would have been if I'd cut them sort of all not wobbly, but like on an angle, and so they were kind of like, you know, long triangle pieces. That would have been cool too, but I just like the look of the way I did it anyway, with just straight pieces like this. And as you see, as I glue them on, put them down here, I just leave sort of a little bit at the end, and it just looks, I'm just fitting them on here, and it just looks sort of staggered, and that's the way I wanted it to look. Okay, well, this is it for part 1 of how I made this collage painting. So please stay tuned for part 2, which will be up shortly as soon as I make the video. And as you can see, I'm just testing the pot on here, and I just love the way it looks. So stay tuned for part 2, and I will show you how I assembled everything on the back here, and then you know, did some final touches like gilding stuff and just fixing everything up so it's finished. Thanks so much for watching. Drop me a like and subscribe if you care to. Have a great day.